Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is The Future of Prospecting, How AI is Powering the Next Era of Advisor Growth. It's a conversation with Eden Ovadia, co-founder of FINNY. I'm Louis Diamond, and this is the Diamond Podcast for Financial Advisors.
At Diamond Consultants, we help elite advisors identify the right environment for their businesses to thrive, whether that's at a wirehouse, boutique, or independent firm. With nearly 3 decades of experience, we've guided thousands of advisors and represented more than $250 billion in assets transitioned. And each year, 1 in 4 advisors managing $1 billion or more who change firms are our clients. Our process is education-driven and based on building relationships, starting as your strategic partner well before you're even thinking of a move. To schedule a confidential conversation, call us at 908-879-1002. Wondering why advisors change firms and where they're headed? Are transition deals going up or down? Those very questions and more inspired us to create our annual Advisor Transition Report. It's the award-winning, data-driven resource designed for advisors that connects the dots between the motivations around movement and the firm's appetite for top talent. Arm yourself with the knowledge you need to make smart decisions. Download your copy at diamond-consultants.com/transition report.
Growth is every advisor's goal, but it's also one of the biggest challenges. Traditional prospecting takes time, energy, and often a willingness to do things most advisors would rather avoid: networking, cold outreach, or endless follow-ups. Eden Ovadia and her co-founders built FINNY to change that. Using artificial intelligence, FINNY automatically identifies and matches advisors with ideal prospects, those who share their values, interests, and financial needs, and even reaches out on the advisor's behalf with personalized messages across multiple channels. The result? A platform that helps advisors grow while doing less work. It's what Eden calls the holy grail of growth. In this episode, we explore how AI is transforming client acquisition and what it means for the future of advice. Eden shares why the next generation of advisors is embracing AI to scale personalized outreach, how FINNY's data engine works to match clients and advisors like a dating app for wealth management, the lessons she learned at Y Combinator and Boston Consulting Group that shaped FINNY's vision, why she believes technology will free advisors to spend more time on what matters most, human connection, and much more. It's a fascinating look at how the next wave of innovation is making growth smarter and more human than ever before. So let's get to it. Eden, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Of course, I'm a big fan of the pod, and so I'm excited to be here.
Very good. I saw you present at the Future Proof Festival, and I knew after seeing you that our audience would really benefit from your perspective because it's so different from many others in the space, and I'm really excited to learn more about what you're up to at FINNY. But before we get there, walk us through your background. I know you spent time as a consultant at Boston Consulting Group. Then just walk us down the path of how you got here.
Yeah, this is a bit of a lesser known fact, but I actually started my career at EY.
There we go.
We have that in common. So my original background is in tech, and so I studied software engineering and machine learning in college, and I think that's what makes me and my 2 co-founders coming into this space with a bit of a unique perspective. We all have AI engineering backgrounds and have applied some of those skills into solving organic growth for advisors, which I think we're just looking at this problem from a totally different perspective from others. But my background originally was in tech. Then I moved to New York from Montreal out of college and went to work at Boston Consulting Group, specifically on their private equity team, where I got the chance to do a lot of M&A diligences for some of the large wealth management firms that you're seeing. So all the acquisitions you see in the news, at one point I was involved in the advisory, the advising of those. And that's where I got, I would say, pretty obsessed with the world of wealth management.
Very cool. So basically at BCG, a private equity sponsor who was diligencing an M&A target, they would hire your team at BCG to do some due diligence on the industry and on the target, et cetera?
Exactly. So they would come to us and say, hey, we're looking at this target, or help us find a target and to help us decide and diligence it. Is it a good acquisition? And if so, like, what's the right price for it?
Very cool. So, I mean, going from the world of management consulting, probably living on airplanes out of suitcases, et cetera, what kind of gave you the urge or the push to, I guess, flex your technology skills and then try to bridge fintech technology and financial services into a business?
So I would say two things. One, I always knew I wanted to start a business since I was young. It was the reason that I went into software engineering at the time. That was what people did when they knew that long term they might want to be an entrepreneur. It was to go out and study software engineering. I don't know if that's the same today anymore, but that was always a goal of mine. It was one of those things that I assumed would just be later in life. But then in 2023, large language models became mainstream. So ChatGPT really came out to the world and was getting a lot of traction. It was pretty similar to the technology that I'd studied in college. And I felt like it was very much this like now or never moment. Like there was this massive technology shift, this huge innovation, similar to maybe what it felt like during the dot-com era when cloud computing became more prevalent, or even back in the 80s when it was the first time you could actually code on a computer and not on punch cards. And so it felt like one of these like once in a lifetime, like once in a generation technology shifts. And at the same time, from my work at BCG, I was going super deep in the world of wealth. And it similarly felt like wealth was going through this once in a lifetime change where all these like really interesting macroeconomic conditions were fundamentally changing like this industry that historically hasn't really benefited from a lot of change in technology or change whatsoever. And so it felt like the wealth management was on the verge of something really big. And then from a technology perspective, all for the first time, we had access to these tools that previous generations did not have. And so it felt like all roads just pointed to this.
Interesting. Was there an aha moment or just
Yeah.
like a moment of clarity you had when you figured there was a problem that you wanted to solve with your company Finny that wasn't already being solved by other firms in the market? And I know, as an aside, I read online that you were offered a job at a large RIA while you were still employed at BCG. Was that kind of a catalyst or kind of a domino that fell that led you to where you are today?
That's exactly right. It's funny because in hindsight, it all was so serendipitous, but at the time, obviously, you don't see that when it's happening to you firsthand. Hindsight is 2020. But at the time, I was at BCG. I was doing a lot of work in wealth. One of the firms I was working with pretty closely, I tried to come in house or come in and hire me. And they wanted to hire me for what they had called their organic growth problem. Without revealing too much about this firm, they had done a series of acquisitions, pretty expensive acquisitions. 2022 was a tough year, as it was for many. And it made them realize that when you took out market growth, most of the advisors that were under their umbrella now were actually flatlining or declining from a growth perspective. And that was a really scary thought. And what compounded that was the fact that there was no clear way of investing capital to increase growth rates. There was just no formula that they can apply that said, hey, if we put $10 million, we will get this amount of growth.
Right.
There was just no growth engine. And that's what they wanted to hire me to come in and fix. And it was through and build. And it was through that recruiting process that I started talking to, that took me like months to talk to like hundreds of advisors. And it became very clear that this wasn't this RA problem, but it was truly like an industry problem. And I realized that you take that with a combination of all these other like technological shifts. And I was 25 at the time. And so I thought, I have nothing to lose. Let's go out and let's build something, which felt like a really important, like painful problem for a lot of the advisors I'd spoken to. And it candidly felt like the most important problem that needed to be solved.
I don't disagree. I mean, and we'll talk about it in a second, what Finny is doing in the marketplace. But from what I've seen is if you can provide a growth avenue for an advisor or for a firm, you become an easier choice or an easier decision. Like just about every advisor wants to grow. Most that do want to grow, they want to grow with the least amount of effort or friction as possible. And they want to try to avoid networking at the country club and doing seminars. They want a more, we'll say, like almost like the magic bullet. And I agree with you that organic growth is one of the biggest problems facing the industry. And most growth that firms face is due to market. And if you take out RMDs and outflows, et cetera, most firms are probably barely growing or are shrinking. So it sounds like a great concept to deploy your skills on. So yeah, for our listeners who just may never heard of Finny or are less familiar with what your company does, can you just take a second to describe the value proposition and how advisors are utilizing Finny today?
Yeah, absolutely. The original idea behind Finny, and it's very similar to exactly what we ended up building, was how could we actually give advisors tools that'll help them bring on a new clients they'll actually get along with while not being another tool added to their toolkit that they have to remember to use at the end of a long day. And so grow while doing less work. So the value proposition from a first principles perspective, it's super straightforward. It's let's build a tool for advisors that'll allow them to prospect even when they're sleeping, find clients they'll really get along with, have similar values, where their value proposition really resonates with the pain points that prospects might be feeling. Let's automate that entire process, really enabling the advisor to have what a marketing team would be doing for them, but without the marketing team and without the time investment there. And so we work with all different types of advisors. The only requirement really to work with us is you need to want to grow.
That makes sense. So Finny's providing a platform for advisors to log into, and then what's the chain of events? So maybe
Yeah.
just give some examples of how an advisor would use the platform.
Yeah. So they log in, they create a profile. It feels like creating a dating profile. That's what I've been told 100 times, is because we ask them personal questions like, where did you grow up? And what do you do for fun on the
Mhm.
weekend? Do you have kids? Vinny also is able to actually go out and scrape their information. And so by the time an advisor actually goes in to create an account, most of this is pre-filled for them, which is pretty cool. Once their account is created, where they would have told us not just about themselves, but what clients they like to work with, what their value proposition is. And so we get really smart on the profile of the advisor. That's really all the work that needs to be done. From there, Fanny can go out, look into our database of every single person in North America over the age of 18, and start looking for people that match the description or the niches that they would have described. And Finny's database is probably the thing that it's like the aha moment for advisors. People get really excited about it because you see we have data around public property records, government records, demographics, financials, 401k data, social media. Basically, anytime any person is ever mentioned on the internet or scraping and aggregating that and building that as part of their dossier. But we also have things like intent signals. So we actually know what keywords people are looking up online. And so if I'm an advisor, I'll just give like a personal example. If I'm an advisor who is Canadian, so and lives in the US, so like myself, went to McGill, now lives in New York and wants to work with other business owners who are maybe looking up stock option planning, I can actually go into Finny and say, help me find business owners between the ages of 30 to 40 who are looking up stock option planning keywords online, went to McGill University, and have businesses that do over $3 million in revenue. And Finny can actually not only find you that list, but score them specific to you based off
Wow.
who we think you'll actually have the highest likelihood of converting. And that's just like this really magical moment. But beyond that, we'll do like the next hardest thing, which is actually how do you get in contact with them and get them to meet with you? And so Finny will generate personalized messages through multiple channels, so email, LinkedIn, even AI voicemails, and send that out on your behalf, all coming from the advisor. So the client is just getting these really targeted, personalized messages coming from the advisor. They don't even know the Finny exists.
I mean, it's crazy. And it's like part creepy, but I guess it's the way of the world. But also, it's like, it seems like so intuitive that you have a profile as an advisor, you have your ideal client, and let's unleash technology to find more of these people that I can speak to directly on a personalized basis. I'm curious, you mentioned that in your example of this Canadian client who lives in the US who's looking up stock option planning. How does the platform know that someone's looking up stock option planning online? How does it match that to the individual?
So it's what we call intent signals. We do a lot. So our team, probably the thing that we do the best is data science. And so we've built an entire data science team that goes out and aggregates information. We have a database internally that has about 300 million plus records, and it's updated with about 6 billion data points every single day. The hardest thing technically we have to do is bring in all these data points from dozens of sources and then match them and reconcile them to the same record. And so we know that this Louis is the same as this Louis, for example. And then with the way we get intent signals is actually through cookie data. And so we're able to know what their cookie patterns are based off what websites they're actually visiting and what they're researching. And then from that, actually match that back to records in our database. And so if you're looking up a Forbes article on 401k planning, we can actually know that and then tag you as intent in 401k planning.
Wow. It's very cool. I saw an article that folks have described Finny to be almost like the hinge for financial advisors. You mentioned that the profile you create is like a dating profile. Taking the analogy to the next level would be you have your dating profile. Now let's go find you folks that you're a match to. I'm gonna say, do you like that analogy? And does that influence the way that you build your product?
Yes, there's a funny story on that analogy. It actually came up very early days of Finny when me and my co-founders had sat for our first ever interview where we were like announcing Finny. And we had spent 2 hours like just really getting to the details of the vision, our stories, and our background. And in the last 1 minute of the interview, my co-founder, Victoria, said, yeah, just in really simple terms, it's like Hinge for financial advisors. And like that is the first line in the article, obviously, that is now what is always referred to, which is so funny. But it stuck because it's a great analogy. I always like we do think of ourselves as matchmakers. And one quote that I think I shared at Future Proof that always blows people away is that the average marriage in the US is 8.5 years, and the average financial advisor to client relationship is 3 to 4x that, right? And so it's someone who, like, fundamentally, it's like your therapist you're going to be calling at every major life juncture for advice when you're going through all these really emotional periods of your life, marriages, births, divorces, like big purchases, deaths in the family. This is the person you're calling. And so it's super important you actually get along with this person and you share similar values and you feel comfortable with them, which is why we go back to this analogy. And so, yeah, I would think of it as like almost like your dating coach, so helping you find potential matches that we think you'll really get along with and then marry, and then making sure that you can get set up on the first date.
That's so cool. And probably a little bit different than marriage. You're actually helping these folks make a lot of money by unlocking a lifetime of value with the client. So maybe a little bit different. And also, I would hope that Finney's helping advisors find multiple matches instead of
That's
just
true.
one. Can you give? I remember at the presentation I saw you give, the example that really I think brought to life what Finney's doing was of a client of yours who was in like Jackson, Wyoming, and used the platform to find new clients and had like an incredible hit rate or conversion rate. Can you share whether it's that analogy or that anecdote or another one? Just bring this to life a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll actually share a more broad example because I think when people hear when I give like really niche examples, they're like, oh, that only works when it's like really niche. But I'll give you an example with a client recently. He's a solo advisor. He's in California and he wanted to work with tech professionals within, let's just call it like a 20-mile radius of where he lives. And between the ages of 45 to 60, who work at a set of these, let's say, 5 companies that are HQ'd in his area and are recently looking up stock option planning keywords and have a net worth of over $1 million. What he was able to do is actually go into Finny, tell Finny exactly what he was looking for, find that list. This is also someone who creates like content, so like thought leadership. He was able to include that in the art in the content that Finny generated for him. And so he ran a campaign across LinkedIn and across emails. Within the first 30 days, he had gotten about 70 connections with people
Wow.
that matched that demographic. So exactly his niche, which was just high earning professionals working in tech, looking up stock option planning keywords. He was able to get them to actually read his materials because he was distributing them through this campaign. And then within 30 days of launching this campaign, he brought on a new $5 million household. And the thing that was so crazy there was when he had met this couple for the first time, they had said something like, this is the craziest timing. We were actually just starting to talk about looking for a financial advisor, and we just had a couple of questions, and we're about to start our search, and you reached out at the exact right time. And that to me was so funny. It was like, yeah, that's by design, right? Like, with the whole idea is we can actually reach out at the right time with the right message, and that's exactly what he did. Like, it was such an awesome example and so funny, but to hear. But yeah, and just to like take this example further, he's the sole provider for his household. He has young kids, and bringing on a $5 million client that'll stay likely with for the next 20 years, that's a very significant increase to his like income that he's able to bring home at the end of the day. And like that to me is a really special example of someone who left their very comfortable job at a large wirehouse, went out, started their own business, took a leap of faith, a really scary thing, bet on themselves, and were able to fundamentally let them find clients they'll actually get along with and provide for their families and grow their businesses. And that's the dream.
It really is. I mean, yeah. I mean, you get one $5 million client from this, and it becomes all worth it. That's a very cool example. If an advisor isn't using your platform, can you just talk a little bit about, we'll call it like the lead generation, organic growth options that advisors have? Like if they're not working with Finny, are they buying leads from Smart Asset? Are they strictly relying upon referrals from Schwab and Fidelity branches? Obviously, there's asking clients for referrals, but maybe more so on like the tech and lead generation side. What are the typical options that advisors face and that you're trying to, I guess, overcome when you're positioning Finny to them?
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of skepticism when we go out to talk to people for the first time because they have been promised the world and made all these like incredible promises of growth time and time again and very expensive commitments they've had to make that haven't necessarily panned out. The platform we've built is like fundamentally like a new category. It's totally different. It's actually giving the advisors those tools they need to go out and find the clients, not buy clients and compete with other advisors on the highest bidder, which feels like a deeply impersonal also process for everyone involved. We are often I would say we're not necessarily replacing any tools because it's pretty different. We actually have a large number of clients that use Smart Asset and Finny. And the unlock here is if you have the set of dormant leads that haven't responded to you or you haven't been able to convert, whether it's through a webinar that you hosted, whether it's through Smart Asset or another one of the lead gen sources, you can actually upload them onto Finny. We'll enrich them for you and we'll actually tell you, oh, here of the 1,000 people who you have in this list in an Excel file that probably haven't looked at in 10 years, here are your 10 people who actively are looking up keywords related to financial planning. Would be a great time to reach out. These 5 just got promoted. These 10 just moved to your area, and actually finding all these like money in motion events. And then we actually help you do the next step, which is reach out to them too. And so we're actually pretty complementary to a lot of the things that you're already doing, whether you're hosting webinars, whether you're hosting dinners, whether you're buying leads from different sources, whether you're running LinkedIn campaigns or creating content. Like I would think of Finny as like an additive that can really bring all these pieces together in a more deliberate, thoughtful way.
Very interesting. And without sharing who your specific clients are, like who have been the typical buyers of Finny? Is it large broker dealers? Is it strictly RIA? Is it a solo advisor with 50 million? Is it large enterprises, or is it cross section of all the categories?
Yeah, when we had started, it was definitely the smaller solo type RIAs who were looking to grow, and maybe I just left a wirehouse and growth was really a priority. And that makes sense because those are probably the segment of the market that wants to grow the most and is most willing to adopt new technology as we are a newer tool. But over the last year or so, I think we've gone past that and we're now able to serve really, like I said at the beginning, anyone who wants to grow. So whether you're a broker dealer, you're at an IBD, whether you're at an RA, whether you're a hybrid advisor, really doesn't really matter what your organization looks like, as long as you're someone who wants to go and bring on clients. And it's not necessarily just growth at all costs, but it's bringing on people you'll actually get along with. I think that's a key part of it too.
Definitely. Yeah, I like that's like a key part of it is like we're gonna find people that you like, that are like you, et cetera. Because like at the end of the day, you might have a client that has a ton of assets, going to make you a lot of money. But if you're not a good personality match or you can't really align on the value that you're adding to them, it's not as fun. It's not as fulfilling. So to be able to grow, work with the right people, add value in the right way at the right point in time, but also have a better chance of finding people that really can get along with. It seems like it's the holy grail of growth.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think like from a like an altruistic perspective, I took a step back and I thought about like what was Finny's like long-term goal. It was really like how do we make good financial advice more accessible to all Americans who want it? And the way that we think about this is if you believe the McKinsey study that says there's going to be a shortage of about 100,000 financial advisors, the way we think about Finny's role in that is there's a pool of prospects or clients who need financial advice, and there's a pool of advisors who are ready to give advice. We see Finny as like this optimization between the supply and the demand. We can actually help find every client's or prospect's unique advisor who can serve them better than anyone else and make that match and make that connection. And the cool thing is that the more we do it, the better we get at predicting a match. And so Finny's just going to get better and better at making that optimized matching.
I would also probably take a step further and say that there's a lot of advisors or folks that would love to be an advisor, but just the thought of building a practice from scratch and prospecting, it doesn't really speak to them. They want to work with clients, they want to do planning, they want to talk about the markets. So I can also see this as a way to a new kind of crop of advisors who don't want to do the old school methods of prospecting, and they can use the platform as presumably being more tech enabled since they're younger coming into the industry and being able to grow a practice. And maybe that opens up a new lane for folks to join the industry.
Yeah, you have no idea how many people have come up to me and said, I've been thinking about starting my business for a while, but I've been apprehensive for all the reasons you just mentioned. And it's tools like Finny that are giving me the courage to go out and do it and like make it a little bit less scary. And so that I totally agree. We hear that a lot.
Very cool. What are some of the most common misconceptions or resistance points that you and your team experience when an advisor first learns about Finny or is doing a demo, et cetera?
So I think when they first hear about Finny, there's people try to pattern match us to tools or services they already know of. And so what like the smart asset one you mentioned before or any other lead gen source. So there's this inherent, like I said before, like cynicism. It's like, oh, I don't want to pay my fight and end up as the caller number 5 when I prospect and when I buy a lead, am I buying the same lead just to 5 other people? Do I get exclusivity? There's a bit of a paradigm shift that they need to like a mindset shift because it's just like it's not a zero-sum game in the world of, like, Finny. We truly have everyone in North America, and so there's 300 million people, there's more than enough to go around, and so that's one of the misconceptions. I think the second part is some of the other tools out there just provide data, and a lot of tools that have been built for financial advisors over the last 20 years is something that adds more work to their plate, and so, great, here is data. Great, here are insights you can use. Here are things you can do to serve your client better, but they actually have to go out and action on them. That's exhausting. And like the last thing someone wants to do is use a tool that will give them more work, especially when you're talking to business owners who the most finite resource is their time. And so they look at Finny and they're like, I won't have time to dedicate 9 hours a week to this. And like, is this another thing that I have to remember to use? And it was very important to us that we actually shift that mindset very early on. And the best advisors at Finny only have to log in for an hour a month and set an autopilot. And then it works in the background on their behalf. And I think that so those two things are like probably the biggest differences from what's in the market right now and the things we have to overcome early on.
It's so incredible. And can you give an example of like the hyper personalized messages that Finny will create? Like, let's use your example of the advisor client you had in California who got this $5 million prospect. Like, so he goes in, builds out the persona or the profile is going after, unleashes Finny, and then Finny will automatically create a personalized message outreach to these individuals. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, and the advisor's always in the driver's seat, and so they have full control over the level of personalization, what should be said, the messaging, obviously, and they will approve the message before they go out. But they can say something like, if they went to the same school, make a joke about the university mascot. That's like a small personalization. Or if they live within a 5 mile radius of me, suggest a highly rated local coffee shop. That's like a great personalization. You can also say, hey, Vinny already knows that you work. I'll use as example, you work really well with Netflix executives. And so if this person happens to work at Netflix, mention that. Hey, I really enjoyed working with other Netflix executives talking about their stock option planning. We could probably have a great conversation. So Finny has all the context, both about the advisor and their value proposition and about the prospect. And we'll look for things like similarities to break the ice. Maybe they'll make a joke about the weather, just like small things like that'll add a bit of like social proof, add some credibility, and just look very different from other maybe generic spray and pray messages they'll get.
Right. Yeah, because it actually looks like, oh wow, they actually like took time to look me up and to research me. And even if I'm not that interested, I'm going to read this because they took the time to understand me. And 100,000 people didn't get the same message.
Exactly. And I would say like what the biggest learning for us when we were building Finny was that the personalization is better received when it's about how the advisor can serve them versus trying to sound overly creepy. And so where I think a lot of other tools have gone wrong is like, that was a great article you posted on LinkedIn 3 days ago about this, and like, congrats on the birth of your newborn son. Like, just like oversharing. And like, in reality, like, that's actually like, creepy to your point when like the personalization should be more about like how the advisor can uniquely serve them. So the Netflix example I gave, or meeting them at a coffee shop that's convenient to them, like that is where personalization is key, not necessarily just like dumping all the data we know about them in an email.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I know you and your founding team were part of Y Combinator, which is, I mean, I think everyone has heard of YC. It's highly prestigious. Some of the best companies in the world have launched out of Y Combinator. Can you talk about the decision to apply and what was it like to work within your cohort at YC?
Yeah, it was a dream, honestly. So we had applied, me and my two co-founders applied in the spring of 2024. And the day we got in was probably one of the best days of all of our lives, like when we got that call. And I don't know how much you know about the process, but it's a super intense but super quick process of applying. And it's one of those things where it's like the most outsized impact a 10-minute window can have on your life. And so the way that the interview process or the application process works is you fill in an online form, 30 questions. Like it's not anything super comprehensive. You fill in the form, and then within a week, they let you know if you got an interview or not. I think only about 7% of applications get an interview. So getting the interview is already like a huge excitement. The interview itself is 10 minutes. It's a 10-minute Zoom call. It's you and your co-founders and then 2 partners from YC. It's a 10-minute call, and there's no pleasantries. They just start and they say, "What are you building? Why do you think people want what you're building? And how do you know?" And then they'll just pressure you from there and like pressure test your answers. And the exercise really is to understand how you as founders like work under pressure, but also like think through some of these things and how much confidence you have in the platform or the solution you're thinking of building or have built. So it's a 10-minute call. And then at the end they said, "Okay, bye." Like it just ends. And then that night you get a call and it's a go or no go. And that's it. And that'll fundamentally change your life in the course of your career and the trajectory of your company if you get in, because to your point, it's one of those, it's the most famous accelerator. And the credibility and the amount of the benefit that doing some program like this has had in the company is just intangible.
What are one or two big takeaways you had from being part of YC? Like we'll say outside of the halo effect that being a YC company has. What was like a mentorship lesson or a learning lesson or just like a new way you're able to serve clients after you went through YC?
The YC advice that I think sounds so simple, but is really true. It's just make something people want and find 10 people who love your product, who love what you do. And like just do that. And if you do that, you'll have a $1 billion company. But just find 10 people who
So easy.
cannot live without what you're doing and love it. And like that sounds so trivial, but from a first principles perspective, it was actually like quite hard, right? Like you're a startup, you don't have like a fully baked out platform, things are breaking, you have no credibility. Actually finding those 10 people who will say, "Finny has changed my life," and like has like fundamentally like really helped the outcome of my business was not a trivial thing to do at all. And once we were able to do that, we knew it was time to scale. But I think a common pitfall of a lot of companies or a lot of founders is the second they can get funding and they just will scale at all costs then without thinking about like the first principles and like the fundamentals of like, are you building what people want? Are they really liking it? Are you providing value? How do you know you're building the right thing? And like stress testing that. And so I think just that like rigor and just being incredibly like intellectually honest with ourselves around like, are we doing the right thing? Are we actually providing value? It's super easy, I think, as founders to get lost in some of the noise and people think you're doing such great things. And when you pitch it to people, they say you're so smart and it's so great. But like actually going back and saying, are we providing value to at least 10 people? And do they actually love it? And just like keep asking ourselves that until we're ready to scale. That's one of the things that helped us, I think, the most.
Very cool. And I mean, the company hasn't been around for that long. You're growing quickly. I know you raised a $4.3 million seed round and you gained traction in a fairly short window. What have been some of the earliest challenges you faced as you've gone from an idea, probably something on a whiteboard or a sheet of paper, into a company and now looking to build an enterprise?
Such a good question. I think the hardest thing for us, especially in the early days, and internally at Finney, we call them the dark days, was actually going from 0 to 1. And so we had an idea. The idea stayed the same. It was like build a platform that helps advisors grow their business agentically almost, which means like it wasn't like another thing that would add work to their plate, but would actually
Yep.
remove work. That was really hard to build because it wasn't like we wanted to build like a point solution or something like really specific that only did like a certain thing. We had to go out and build an entire platform that had leads, found them, enriched the data, scored them, built the content, reached out like across multiple channels, tracked the pipeline. So like we always joke, we had to build like 6 or 7 companies in one. We basically built like an entire data company and then an entire like matching and like machine learning and prioritization and then like an outbound sequence, like a MailChimp. Like we've just had to build all these little
Yep.
companies. And until we had these all built out, it wasn't a great customer experience. And so we had to really just like keep our heads down and build this full platform before. And then once it started working, it really started working. But it was really binary for us. It was like, we just need to do all of these things. Whereas I think a lot of other companies have the benefit of being able to like release smaller solutions like iteratively and like build on that. For us, we had to build like this entire platform first. And so it took us a little bit longer. But then we were able to get like pretty immense, huge traction once it actually started working.
Very interesting. And what would you say the next phase of Finny looks like? Like the next year, 2 years, this AI stuff is evolving so rapidly. So maybe in the next like week, what is it that you're focused on, and what does the next phase of the company look like?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think our like vision is always going to be this like growth engine, but as we unpack what growth means, I think for us, it doesn't necessarily mean like net new clients. It could also mean just growing your share of wallet and increasing your assets per client, and then retaining your clients and serving them better. And so one area that we're already getting pulled into from some clients of ours is actually helping them with insights and with data on their existing client base. And so it's an insane thing that oftentimes Finny knows more about their clients than they do. Like we'll know where they grew up, where they went to school, what they're looking up online, what life events they're going through, and all of these things we can actually surface to the advisor to as ways to like provide more value and to deepen their relationship with their clients. And that around like deepening the client relationship and like better serving your clients is definitely an area we're pretty excited about. It really falls quite nicely with our growth goals. Growth just doesn't necessarily always mean new clients.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. I mean, you already have like a captive audience of clients. I would imagine it's a little bit easier or less expensive to gain wallet share from existing relationships than it is to go out and find a totally new relationship. And I know like for a couple of years, like Morgan Stanley has had Next Best Action, which is their hyper personalized like AI assistant that kind of combs a book of business for opportunities. It sounds like this is part that, but you take data not from someone's CRM and from their forms that they've submitted to the firm, but more from all the different data sources that you mentioned, public records, internet searches, et cetera. So it's almost like the next level of some of these AI tools that some firms are deploying.
Yep. And it doesn't necessarily even need to be like an action, like a next best action. It could just be here's probably like a news article or a thought piece that this client would really appreciate because they're asking questions about this and you've already written this. And so just like surfacing content and just helpful insights at the right time and just being there to answer their questions before they even ask it. So it doesn't necessarily even need to be like an upsell or a cross sell or anything like monetary. It's just again, I'll keep giving my personal example. I grew up in Canada, I live in the US. There's obviously a very public trade war going on between Canada and the US right now. A financial advisor can reach out to me and say, hey, here's how our firm is thinking about this trade war and like how it's affecting our cross-border our clients with cross-border banking. I would be super interested in reading that. And I think that's like a huge difference from what we're seeing today, which is just like these canned generic newsletters that every advisor sends out, that market outlooks that don't actually provide like real value to their clients.
Makes sense. Do you find your clients that are using the platform to the fullest extent or who are most successful on the platform, is the value that they're adding just a simple personalized email? Or is it like creating a blog or an article series or videos or podcasts? Like, is there like a secret sauce of it? Basically, it's not just finding the right people to reach out to, it's the outreach message that's personalized and different from others. Is there like I guess like other value adds that your advisor clients are using to convert these clients?
Unfortunately, no. I wish I could say yes and say, yeah, this is a silver bullet. And it's just like everyone who has a podcast. But I actually think that it's very similar to the advice that YC gave us, which is like 5, 10 people who really love what you're doing. And it's just the same idea. And it's if you're a financial advisor and you've honed your craft and you have a really clear value proposition, and you know exactly how you can serve your audience and your clients, like those are the ones that do really well on Finny. And so understanding like who you can serve, why you can serve them better than anyone else. So when you put them in front of you, that message really resonates. And so, yes, sometimes that's a blog, an article, a podcast, YouTube video. Sometimes that's just having an amazing website that really is super descriptive about like the way you can serve your clients. Sometimes it's just a good email and where you're introducing yourself and your background really resonates with them. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be any of this like difficult, like create like massive content generation. It just needs to be like doing the work to figure out how you can serve clients better than anyone else.
Makes sense. And I mean, just given your immense experience as a management consultant, now a founder in building Finny, how do you see client acquisition changing for advisors over the next couple of years?
I love that question. I once controversially said something like referrals are dead, and people had a really strong reaction to that. And so I'm not going to say that, but and they won't be. And the data, like I think like 88% of financial advisors still rely on referrals as their main source of growth. And referrals will always be king. That will always be. If you have referrals, like you should always do everything you can to encourage referrals. I think the reality is, though, that our next generations, like our generations, are much less likely to make referrals and give referrals and need referrals. And so they're much more likely to look for their advisor through digital sources and like find their advisor on digital sources. And so the consumer behavior is changing. And so I think it's going to be more and more important for advisors to keep up with the way that the next consumer wants to be found and served. And so I think like the next generation of financial advisors and of consumers it's going to be a lot more like digital, which I think you're right. You're already seeing a lot less referral based, a lot more niche. And so I think like people who have like really differentiated value propositions who can cut through some of this noise, younger generations are seen to have a little bit more, like more specific values around like what they want to invest in. And so being able to articulate that, and I think is going to be super important as well.
I think that's super interesting. It's not like you have to rely upon one channel or like you can't take referrals anymore. It's just, I think what you're saying is there's multiple ways to bring in new clients if you do want to grow. And your platform is a very powerful way to do it. But it's not that you have to use your platform exclusively or use it and disregard referrals or other ways that you've been successful in bringing in clients over the years.
Exactly.
What about how you think AI will change not just outreach, lead generation, but the broader advisor client relationship? It's a tough one because, again, this AI concept is evolving so rapidly. Even just seeing the way people use ChatGPT and Gemini, et cetera, in the last year has changed so quickly and so rapidly. But what's your prognostication about how advisors are going to serve clients differently in the future because of AI?
It'll just let them serve their clients better. And I just think that like any task that an advisor doesn't want to do and finds not to be energizing, they'll be able to outsource to AI. And so manual repetitive tasks, mundane tasks. And so most advisors, I imagine, will be just spending 100% or close to 100% of their time FaceTime with their clients, actually like building the relationship and doing the actual advising. And then everything else will really be automated in the background. And so I think what you'll be able to do is see like a huge productivity boost for advisors in terms of like average they're able to manage per advisor, and that will increase while the level of care will actually increase or stay consistent too. And so I think you'll be able to see these like super advisors.
It's very interesting. I saw Michael Kitces give a presentation this year, and he said that the concept of something like with AI, advisors are going to be able to serve more clients and just have more time to gather assets. But from his experience, most advisors, if they have more time, it means they're going to golf more. So I think we'll definitely have that dynamic where some will lean in and be able to serve more clients. Some are going to golf more, all the respect in the world to them. But we talked earlier, you brought up the McKinsey study that mentioned a 100,000 advisor shortfall. Do you think that might be a little bit overstated? Because if advisors lean into AI and can boost productivity and efficiency, like, do you need as many advisors? Because me as an advisor who was maxed out at 100 clients, now maybe I can serve 150 clients because 25% of my day-to-day has been cut out by AI tasks.
100%. I think like the gap of 100,000 is assuming current advisor productivity. And so if you increase productivity by 30%, your gap is solved. But I think then you still have the real concern that you called out, which was not every advisor wants to increase their productivity. Or maybe they do, but they don't want to increase like the amount of assets they can actually manage. And so they'll actually spend less time managing the same amount of assets. And so you might still have that gap. But one thing I think that is pretty reassuring is the next generation of college kids or people who are coming into the workforce, I think are going to be picking this career more and more than historically they have. And I think the reason for that is because like these are one of the careers that won't ever get replaced by AI. I think it's like anyone who's been in this industry for 20 years has probably seen that headline, financial advisor replaced by this new tool. And time again, they've actually like disproven that, and advisors are fundamentally here to stay because it's something that a robot will never be able to do. It's really just like a human to human connection. And all of these like trades or professions that really have an emphasis on this human to human connection, I think are going to see a huge resurgence of new talent come in. And that's just, again, like these are just my thoughts on this, but I do think that you're going to see a huge new workforce come in with new people, new talent that want to really focus on like building great relationships with clients, and that plus the AI will solve this gap.
I mean, it is reassuring because I think with anyone in any industry can like think about the doomsday scenario for how AI is going to like take their job or displace what folks are doing. Like I often think about the example of a client just going to ChatGPT and saying, I'm 41 years old, I make $1 million a year, I want to retire by 65. Suggest to me like how I should allocate my $2 million portfolio. And I want to be more aggressive, and just ChatGPT or whatever AI will spit out portfolio allocation. And then boom, they no longer feel like they need an advisor. I mean, it almost sounds like, yeah, there's going to be some of that, just like there's self-directed investors or there's some people use a robo advisor. But I think what you're saying is the real value that advisors provide and why so many individual clients want to work with an advisor instead of a robo tool or a self-directed platform is for that person to person, human to human connection. And you just think that the need for that is going to accelerate and it's not going to be mitigated because of all the advancements in technology.
I totally agree. I think you're going to see a world in which so many of the professions that might be replaced by AI are going to be the ones that don't provide that like human to human connection. And then there's going to be like this like really like this resurgence of, I don't know, some of these like lost professions.
I love it. I got two more questions for you. I know you're busy, so we'll try to wrap this up quickly. But what's one thing you wish every advisor knew about growth, but just don't?
That's a good question. Yeah. It's a good one. What's one thing that you wish advisors knew about growth, but they don't? That what works for someone else doesn't necessarily work for you. And it's like back to the dating analogy. My mom has a saying that applies for dating, but I think it applies for this too. It's like every pot has its lid. I don't know if you ever heard this one. She might have made this one up. I'm not really sure. But basically it's the idea that like everyone will have like find their person. And I think that kind of applies to financial advice and prospecting too, where it's like what's a strategy that might work for your best buddy at the same firm as you might not work for you because you guys are just fundamentally different people with different value propositions, different personalities. And so like you can't force fit someone else's strategy onto yours. You really need to do the work and figure out what works best for you. And that's typically through trial and error.
Yep. Yeah. It's also like the challenge of comparing yourself against anyone. Like people see like, oh my God, he manages $1 billion in assets. Like his life must be so easy. And her life is a dream because she doesn't have to work that hard and she makes $3 million a year. But you forget about all the hard work, things behind the scenes that you just can't compare against. And I think it sounds like it's somewhat similar for generating leads or growing is, yeah, to your point, just because this works for your friend, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right fit for how you should grow or how you could grow. That's a good thing. That's what keeps it exciting.
Exactly. That's totally right. And you might be able to find some way to grow that wouldn't work for your best friend and that's fine. Like, yeah, not every pot has its lid.
Exactly. Good job, Mom. So one last question for you. What's a myth about AI and wealth management or lead generation that you'd like to bust? What's something that you want to set the record straight on?
Ooh, this is a good one. You're asking some good questions.
It's the last question.
Yeah.
I'm done after this.
Okay, here's my slightly controversial one because I hear this a lot. It's that AI is just going to create more like spam and slob, and that it's going to deteriorate the ability to do any type of prospecting because everything is just going to be everyone's going to get 1,000 generic emails. And I don't agree with that. I think that it's going to be actually table stakes that to be a lot more personalized, hyper segmented to a specific niche and much more thoughtful with the outreach. It's going to be the only way to cut through the noise. And people are going to realize that very quickly. And so I actually think that if every single financial advisor was using a tool like Finny or like just generative AI and personalized outreach, the net noise that the consumer population would get, it would actually be decreased because everyone would just get a message from someone that they could actually work with and they would actually get along with that's really personalized and tailored to them. And so I actually think that maybe there'll be some like bump while people figure that out that like you'll get like a ton of like spammy like messages, but those won't work. And so people are going to realize very quickly that the best way to cut through the noise is to send those like very personalized specific messages to the right clients they can serve. And so the level of care and like the messages to look at and the targeting will actually be like really exciting and like increased. It's going to be like that experience if you ever went online and like searched up, I don't know, like a pair of jeans or something, and then the next day you get an ad for it and it's delightful. Like you're like, oh, I was just looking up for something like this. Like I think that level of like personalization.
I was going to say a little bit creepy, but I agree. At least I'm interested in jeans. I'm not seeing something about something I don't care about.
Yeah. It's like I actually had an email the other day from someone selling tires, like car tires. I was like, oh, this is great, but I don't have a car. So like, like it was just it's like great personalized email. Like, okay, but like this is actually, I don't have a car, so it's a bit useless. And that will decrease. Like you're just gonna have to fundamentally know your audience better and target them better. And I think that's great. Like I'm excited to surface things that can actually benefit me and serve me in a better way more directly.
Makes sense. I mean, yeah, like for sure, there's going to be more spam and more stuff that people are going to get sick of and have to sort through. But I think it probably just speaks even more to needing to be different, needing to lead with your value and how it connects with someone. And almost that, like, as there's more AI spam in the world, like instead of spending 2 hours writing this amazing email, like it sounds like you got to do something that's a little bit more scalable and at the same time can be personalized. Because otherwise, you're going to get trapped in spam or just kind of look like everyone else that's doing the same thing.
Exactly.
Ed, and this was so much fun, like a very different interview than we normally have. But yeah, to me, not a financial advisor. I hope FINNY can work for a business like mine. But it sounds like if you are an advisor who's looking to grow, looking to do it with a little bit less effort and a little bit more precision, that folks should absolutely reach out to you. So thank you very much for coming on today, talking about the world of AI, your kind of origin story and solving your first 10 customers' problems and everything else that you're focused on. So I'm excited to see what FINNY's going to do for the industry.
No, this was a lot of fun, great conversation, and honestly, like very thoughtful and awesome questions. So I really enjoyed this.
As a financial advisor, you hold yourself to the highest standards of integrity, honesty, and credibility. You are successful because you take your professional responsibilities seriously and are dedicated to your clients. But are you living your best business life? Are your goals aligned with your firm's, or could a better option exist? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a book written with you in mind. It's a self-guided journey that walks you through the key steps that we take with our advisor clients. This strategic thought process and roadmap to professional self-discovery is designed to help you ask the right questions and think critically and objectively, whether you're considering change or not. Learn how to get your copy at diamond-consultants.com/thebook.